Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ido Geffen. I'm the VP of Product here at Oasis Security. So, today, I hope that you will find this session as fascinating. It's going to take pretty much 30 minutes or so. And what we're going to speak today about is about how to secure non-human identities. And specifically, we will dive into most recent attacks that are involving non-human identities. We will explain how they happened. And hopefully, with this attacker perspective, you will know better how to protect yourself from non-human identity attacks and what are the risks and the consequences of those types of attacks. So the agenda in a very high level, we will discuss about what our non-human identities is, what makes them such as appealing for the attackers. Again, and then we will dive into specific attacks that are involving non-human identities. What is the impact on the business? And in the end, of course, it will share some strategies, recommendations, and best practices on how to protect yourself better than against non-human identities attacks. So let's start with looking on the traditional identity and access management focus on human-to-machine access. Okay, this is pretty much what happens since the first day that we have a computer, right? A human that interact with a machine. So from enterprise perspective, we have the human resource system like Workday, which is our authoritative source. And after that, we have different tools in order to manage, taking care of the authentication, the authorization, etc., of those human identities. So we have a context, right? This is a person, let's say a new developer or a salesperson. So we know what is the role of this employee, to which department they are belonging to. And then the IGA solution, the Identity Governance Administration, will provide the relevant authorization. If it's an admin, so we will make sure that in order to get into the infrastructure and getting high privilege in the crown jewels of the organization, they will work through a privilege access management solution. And so on, right? I mean, every employee will need to do multi-factor authentication in order to gain access to the organization's app. Now, let's move to the world of non-human identities, or in general, even more general, what is happening today in modern enterprises that are very, very distributed. And we have cloud, we have microservices, DevOps, SaaS, AI workflows, etc. So we have this like big mesh of different technologies, architectures, that this is the modern tech stack of organizations. And what we have here is a lot of non-human identities that really connect those service-to-service access. So it's not anymore human to machine, but we have a machine to machine, right? We have Salesforce that with utilizing API keys and connects to the organizational AWS or Slack or Teams, Microsoft Teams, etc. So we have this mesh of many, many types of applications that needs to communicate and passing data from one another in order to make the business move fast and grow. And what we are seeing is that if you look like almost 15 years back, the majority of the identities in traditional enterprise organization were human identities, and there were a small portion of service account, mostly in Active Directory in the on-prem. What happened in the last decade is a huge shift that you're familiar with to the cloud, to SaaS path, that's mostly driven by DevOps team. And we're already seeing it today that sometimes you have 10 times more non-human identities today, right? Because you have, let's say that you're an AWS shop, so you have S3 bucket and EC2 and a lot of other AWS applications that need to communicate with another. And you have ServiceNow and Salesforce, and Splunk SIEM, etc. And all of those applications are communicating with one another. So we're seeing more and more non-human identities, and it's just increasing and increasing. Okay, so if you're looking like not far away from us, right, 2025, we are already speaking about 50 times more of non-human identities especially generated with generated AI, LLMs tools that are creating more and more features, capabilities, applications that behind the scenes are utilizing non-human identities in order to communicate and with one another. So, what are non-human identities? So, on the left here, we are seeing that there are a lot of types of non-human identities. Like we have service accounts, for example, as I mentioned before, in Microsoft Active Directory. We have service principals, which is the name convention in a way of service account in Microsoft Azure. We have RDS users, for example, in AWS, which are the users of the default or the database that many of AWS users are utilizing. We have Okta applications, etc. And on the right side, so if for humans, we have only the human, or non-human identities, we have a lot of different types. And there is also a lot of different types of authentication methods. So we have secret managers, and we have SaaS token for storage account in Azure, and we have specific GitHub API keys in order to communicate with GitHub, etc., etc. And the non-human identity sources are tremendous. Okay, so we have, of course, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud as identity provider, but also we are finding all of the modern big SaaS applications like ServiceNow, Salesforce, GitHub, Workday. They also have their own types of non-human identities, and you can create those identities, interrogate them, connect into your SaaS or into your cloud or to your PaaS like Snowflake or Databricks. So this is a much more distributed world with a lot of different definitions. And as we will see down the road in the examples of the recent breach attacks, we will see that this is exactly what hackers are utilizing, the fact that it creates a lot of areas of blind spots for us, right? The people that really building good stuff in the world and not trying to steal intellectual property or make harm. So again, this comparison between humans that are growing very slowly, okay, like the amount of employees is, again, in traditional organizations are not growing very quickly. It's very centralized by the IGA solutions like SailPoint. We have a context, the human itself. Who is the person, in which department? And we have a very, and again, I'm speaking about enterprise perspective. We have the security and IT team that are creating, right? So there's a new employee. There is a permission that they are setting to this employee. And there is a very structured identity lifecycle management processes today in classic enterprises. In non-human identities, the reality is totally different. They are growing at the pace of code, is how we call it. So like the way that we are developing code, and now again with generative AI and ChatGPT, so the amount of code that people are generating is growing dramatically. There is no single source of truth. We don't really have the context. Like you cannot know by default who is the owner, when those non-human identities were used, to which resources they are connected to, and basically they can create it by everyone, mostly DevOps persons, and we know that these people are moving fast in order to support the business, and it's very hard to, and many times we don't want to make the moves slower, because this is the enabler of the modern organizations, and the very sparse management and no identity lifecycle management, governance, tools, processes around it. So now that I'm turning it aside, and so let's look from the bad guys, right? The attackers. They say, okay, so there is no MFA, which is very common and in human. The lifespan is very long. We are seeing sometimes that people are putting 50 years ahead, that they will not need to rotate those keys. The blast radius is many times very big, because by definition, when you want a machine to speak with a machine or to do a backup job or whatever, you're giving a high permission. So the blast radius is very high. The unauthorized activity is very hard to detect, because again, as when we have a traditional systems of building the patterns of how human is utilizing. So if you live in the US, so it's less likely that you will connect to production in 2 a.m. Pacific time, and I don't know, and you will connect from IP address in Russia, etc. So, but what happens with machines that are communicating all the time? So it's much harder to define deviation from baseline and suspicious or malicious activities. It's a lot of supply chain attacks. We'll cover it more after that. In the Okta breach, Circle CI breach. So many times, like it's very, very attractive SolarWinds, or the bad guys to attack security or technological companies, and from them to do a lateral movement to all of their customer base. And many of them utilizing those as hidden backdoors because they're so hard to find. And we also saw it lately in the latest attacks of Microsoft. So cloud and SaaS, right? So the game pretty much has changed, and we're really seeing the amount of those types of attacks utilizing non-human identity as key part of the attack and the ability to do it. So I will cover now a few of them and deep dive a little bit, do a deeper dive. So one example is the Microsoft breach of 38 terabytes of data that was accidentally exposed by the Microsoft AI research team. So there was a SaaS token that we will discuss in a minute. What is a SaaS token? That basically gain access with this SaaS token. You can access to Azure storage account. But the beginning is that Microsoft AI research team actually granted full access to the entire storage account it was created on, leading to a leak of over 38 terabytes of extremely sensitive data. For example, there were dump of Microsoft employees and their computers were saved in this storage account. And this backup was including private keys, passwords, a lot of internal Microsoft team messages. And again, the researchers from Microsoft share their files using Azure feature called SaaS token, which allows you to share data from Azure storage account. The access level can be limited to specific files when you're using SaaS tokens. However, in this case, the link was configured to share the entire storage account, including another 38 terabytes of data. So basically, the AI research team of Microsoft wanted to share open source to train AI models, but again, this source code was part of a much larger storage account, and because it's pretty much sometimes very hard to make sure that you are configured correctly non-human identities, so it was a very high exposure of Microsoft. And specifically, SaaS token pose a real security risk as they allow sharing information with external identities, unidentified identities. The risk can be examined from several angles, from permissions, hygiene, management, and monitoring. So what I'm trying to convey here is that you have this type of non-human identities that are being utilized, SaaS tokens in Azure Cloud. In this example, and this type of non-human identity is, again, like you have only, when you have this token, secret, whatever you call it, there is nothing that, make sure who is using it, right? As a person, you have something that like a password, something that you have, like your mobile phone, and something that you are, like your face recognition, etc. So, and then you can do multi-factor authentication. And what happens many times with non-human identities, that they have only something that they know. So basically, they're utilizing a secret, which can be treated as a password for humans. And this is why many times, once you have this token secret has been API keys been stolen to the bad guys, they can do it with it whatever they want, because they don't need to do multi-factor authentication. As I mentioned before, many times it's very hard to detect the expiration date. Many people don't do routinely doing key rotation. As it's very common for human identities, right? That you will change your password once in 60 or 90 days. So specifically about SaaS tokens, so listen to that. I mean, there's a list of issues here. From the user side, the generate SaaS token are shared with third party, and there are no logs on token creation. Okay, so you cannot know who created which type of SaaS token. You can create more and more. There's nothing that stops you. Token generated locally. So Azure Cloud is not even involved. I will not get into how it's being done cryptographically, but just believe in this case that it can be done. And if you want, I will share in the end my email, and we'll be more than happy to discuss more in depth about it. And then as a third party, tokens, you can configure them that they will never be expired. It's an option. Token might allow unwanted access due to user mistake, which is exactly what happened here in Microsoft. And when we are looking on the storage account, this is the target of those tokens, there is no way to enumerate existing tokens. So you cannot really know how many tokens were generated, and there is no way to detect tokens with wrong level of access. So again, I mean, a lot of things that is very trivial to do with human identities are not this specific non-human identity of SaaS token. Another example is the typical CI/CD from January 2023. So for those of you that are not familiar with Secure CI, it's a very common tool for DevOps teams that is doing continuous integration and continuous delivery. This is a platform for helping with that. And the breach was started classically from an engineer that was, his computer was compromised by a malware. The malware, the bad guy, stole the session tokens that were inside of this computer. And basically from there, because it's an engineering employee and he had a privilege to generate production access tokens as part of his or her regular duties, the threat actors were able to escalate privilege in order to access and exfiltrate data from the customer environment and steal tokens, keys, and basically all of this without Secure CI knowledge. And again, for me, it's like I think another example of the fact that this specific attack is an example of a very severe a supply chain attack. Okay, so the bad guys are attacking a company that is connected. So Secure CI has thousands of customers that have a direct connection utilizing non-human identities to their CI/CD tools. And basically from there, they're able to get access to the CI/CD process, and so they're driving to the cloud and to production environment. Okay, two more examples that I will provide here today is the Okta breach and the Mercedes Benz. So with regards to Cloudflare, again, it started with supply chain attack and bad guys that were attacking the support center of the support platform of Okta. So the support system stored something called HAR files. So basically what those HAR files were aimed for. So as a customer, of Okta, I'm able to send a HAR file and saying, hey, Okta support team, please help me. I have this and this problem in my internal Okta instance. And in those HAR files, the customers of Okta shared their access keys. Okay, so like they were giving Okta, the support team, the ability to connect into their environment. And again, many times those HAR files have the ability to gain access with high permission, allowing them to take privilege actions in the customer environment, like stealing additional credentials and creating more service accounts as a backdoor. So Cloudflare was one of the customers that Okta, when Okta knew about it, they notified Cloudflare, as a big customer of them, hey, please start to rotate all the keys that are related and connected to us. So Cloudflare did a good job. I mean, they really took this issue seriously, and they rotated, at least what it was they're saying, and what we're believing to them, of 5,000 non-human identities rotation. So it's a very hard thing to do, because you can break stuff, because if you don't have the full context of who are all consumers of a specific non-human identity, so you can start breaking stuff in production. But still, they rotated 5,000 non-human identities, which is a very hard job to do. But still, there were 4 non-human identities that were considered as stale or not in use, or were being ignored by mistake. One of them was to the Atlassian server of the organization. And from there, the attackers were also being able to get into the Bitbucket, Confluence, and Jira of Cloudflare. So again, a third-party supply chain attack from Okta, and then utilizing non-human identities in order to get access to another organization. And from there, really getting access to, with a very high privilege, to a lot of sensitive data and intellectual property of the company. Another example, this will be the last one for today, is Mercedes Benz. So one of the developers of Mercedes put under the public GitHub repository accidentally an access token that was publicly exposed in the internet. So, the bad guys are scanning the internet 24/7, looking for exactly for those type of mistakes. And by stealing this access token, there was basically an access to the Mercedes Benz enterprise server, which consists private source code repositories with other cloud access keys and intellectual property. And as we're seeing as a pattern, what is happening many times, that once there is a tech utilizing non-human identities, from one non-human identities, you're getting access to other systems like code repositories, the storage accounts, etc. And then you're finding more non-human identities, so you can do more and more lateral movements that is many times unmonitored and very hard to detect. So when we a little bit of our data from Oasis, from our deployment in very large organizations across the Fortune 500. So we're seeing like 1,000 non-human identities that almost 10% of them, for example, are tail, which is a lot. We are finding a lot of unrotated secrets that are exposed to off-boarded employees. So the classic use case of the joiner, mover, leaver is also very relevant here. So if we have an employee that is leaving the organization, then this insider threat becomes an external threat when they are leaving the organization, and especially when it comes to IT people, DevOps teams, developers, they're exposed many times to different secrets because they need it in their day-to-day. They're provisioning new types of non-human identities in order to deploy something new in the cloud or whatever. And today there is no mechanism to make sure that, okay, of course that we will disconnect those then from the source code of the company or from the Salesforce of the company, but many times they maybe just copied aside the secrets that they were exposed to. And because there is no, many times, the ability to, to authenticate or to understand who is the entity that is trying to utilize a non-human identity, so they're being many times able to gain access to internal resources, intellectual property of the company, even if they left the company. So the traditional identity and access management tools of today, I hope that you understand it already, doesn't address the visibility and posture problem of non-human identity. Right? I mean, SailPoint will do the identity in government and administration pretty well of humans, but you cannot provide any of those traditional legacy tools about all of the inventory and the visibility, especially when it comes to many types of platforms from on-prem to SaaS, platform as a service and different cloud providers, and then also provide you in a graph view the context, and the posture, right? I mean, to identify the risks, the cyber risk that is related to this non-human identity. And another problem is it's not holistically, you don't see the holistic view across the different tech stack that modern organization. And we're seeing it in many times, the Fortune 5,000, 500, sorry, that they're really split between different platforms from cloud, SaaS to on-prem. And so above the visibility, context, and the posture, we have the non-human identity lifecycle management. So in classic human identity, so we have a provisioning through many times through Workday, and then through Okta or Zero, we have authentication, etc. And the provisioning this in the end. But when it comes to non-human identity, there is no one way to do it as an enterprise, from the provisioning to understand who is, make sure that there is an owner to each one of the identities, to the provisioning in the end. So something very trivial, like as a person, I the ownership of my identity in the organization, right? And if something bad happens, then my account is being blocked, and I don't know, so someone can call me or send me in text messages to make sure that I'm okay. But when it comes to non-human identity, we're seeing that many of them don't have the attribute of who is the owner. So this is where this comes into play, to the point. We're doing something very unique and new. So we are building all of our philosophy, first of all, around the discovery and the context. So we are basically connecting into all of your major identity providers, secret manager, data warehouses, solution on-prem and SaaS applications, digesting all of that into our data modeling, so you'll be able to understand who is accessing to what. And on the right side, we will have our core use cases, from the ability to manage the inventory of non-human identity, to prioritize according to risks, and making sure that you're doing routinely secret rotations, that you're deleting tail accounts, and of course, helping you with governing all of this and compliance. So the journey with Oasis. So basically, the way we are starting with visibility, giving you a full visibility of all of your non-human identities, making sure that you have consumer and resources classification. And then we are starting with what we are calling clean the mess. First of all, finding the most security-related issues that you have and start cleaning them, okay? Reduce dramatically your attack surface and the ability to get being breached in the next 30 days or so. But after that, part of the maturity and the blueprint to work with us, we are moving for stop the bleeding, okay? So now it's not only about solving problem that you currently have, but it's solving it from the root, right? Okay, I mean, let's take secret rotation, for example. It's very trivial that you need to do it with human. For us, it's also very trivial that you will do it with non-human. So if you from beforehand utilizing Oasis will make sure that you have key rotation one in 30, 60, 90 days, then this problem of key rotation is being solved, and the ability to create your own policies, for example, how you want to implement the flow of more than employee, for example. So the Oasis platform. So again, we are starting with the visibility of the inventory. We are discovering automatically in really easy deployment and no agentless deployment. And we are visualizing you all of the different non-human identities that you have. And then we are adding it a context, right? Who are the consumers? Who are the resources that this identity is connected to? Is it overprivileged? Is it connected into PII, etc.? And then we are providing posture violation alerts, and we are providing a very concise about what is the problem, what is the severity level, and also a detailed recommended action of what you can do. And we are starting with manual recommendation, but as part of the lifecycle management, we also giving you as a customer the ability to take automatic action or semi-automatic actions according to your workflows and the way that you want to do it. So to sum up, the benefits of the journey in our non-human identity with Oasis. So with around visibility, you will be able to see what you couldn't do before. And you will have organizational alignment about what are all of the non-human identities that I have, who is the owner of each one of those. Then we will take you to the next step of cleaning up the mess. So you will resolve a violation. We will try to help you to make sure that time to resolve violation is very, very low. And eventually reduce the attack surface because we will focus you, first of all, on the non-human identities that are exposed directly to the internet, that are high privilege, that are connected to PII. So it's also the impact, but also the likelihood of this type of attack to happen. And then we're moving to the last piece, which is the stop the bleeding. So we will tailor together with you as a customer and the processes and the governance policies that you would like to do. So over time, you will see less and less violations because we're solving things from the root. They will find a very high operational efficiency improvement and the ability to really prevent attacks before they're happening. And like in traditional medicine, the preventive medicine is the best one, right? You should eat well and do sports twice or a few times a week, etc. So this is exactly what we're trying to do. So it's not only just running after solving problems, but really preventing them from coming, utilizing our governance mechanisms. So thank you very much. I hope that you learned a lot. And if you want to learn more, or if you want to share feedback with me, so you can approach me directly to my email or to my LinkedIn account. I'll be more than happy to hear you guys. Thank you. Enjoy for your rest of your day. I hope that you find this insightful. And if you are excited as me, you are more than welcome to surf to our website, click on free risk assessment, and let's see if what I'm saying is the reality also in your organization. And it's a matter of few minutes of deployment, and you will getting a detailed report. And our customer success team will walk you through the report, what we were able to find, how we're suggesting you to mitigate and remediate the risk in the most efficient manner. Thank you very much.